Unfortunately, since the last video, I have significantly fallen off the leaderboard. We went from top 1 all the way to top 6. But I mean, hey, it's fine. In the end, the main point of this video is to showcase how to get some of the top masteries in the game. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be showing you every single way that I have mastery right now. And of course, giving some tips and tricks on how to speed up, max out certain things. Or just give you general methods for what you should be aiming for first. Since a lot of you guys apparently are not doing things correctly and are struggling a lot. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment down below, join my Discord server, whatever you want to do, and let's go ahead and let's get started on this full mastery guide. Alright, so first things first, let's have a look at the multipliers page. Now, do keep in mind, right now, this is only for content creators only. So if you don't make videos on this game, you probably do not have this button in the top right. But don't worry, I'm going to be showcasing everything over here. So for those of you that are interested in figuring everything out yourself, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly just scroll down, very, very slowly. Feel free to pause the video, maybe take some screenshots or whatever. But this is every single thing in the game that gives me mastery percentages or mastery multipliers, whatever you want to call it. So let's go ahead, let's quickly just, scroll all the way to the bottom. There we go. In total, you should have at least 357 or around 2 times higher if you're like top 1 or whatever. But you should have around this multiplier in order to reach the maximum amount of mastery in the game. Now let's go over some tips and tricks. For example, mega boss upgrades. I know a lot of you have been struggling with this recently, especially since, you do kind of need to stay on for a really long time. Every mega boss spawns every like 10 minutes, I think. And yeah, well, unfortunately, not everyone can AFK 24/7, but in the meantime, right? I'm gonna give you a quick rundown how to get a bunch of the boss upgrade tokens. I know there's somewhere over here. Yeah, these over here. How do you get a ton of them fast? Well, you have 2 methods. Either A, the one that everyone knows about, you just stay in the game for many, many hours until, eventually you just save up enough. Or B, what you can do is, if you have friends, right, or an alt account maybe, or maybe a bunch of alt accounts, you could go ahead, make private servers on each of those accounts, and then AFK your accounts in those private servers, and then when the mega boss does spawn, all you need to do is, for example, get the one in this account, for example, then just go ahead, leave the game, join on, another private server, and that will at least give you 2 times more boss shards, and then obviously, the more private accounts or whatever that you have, the more boss shards you can get per spawn. Yes, I know, it's not exactly the most practical method, but it is the best method, I guess, in the game that you could theoretically do at the moment. There's no other way to increase your mega boss drops. Drops potions don't work. Christmas potions don't work. So if you do want to go ahead and do that, joining a bunch of different servers, feel free to do so. But if you're like me and you just can't be bothered, just stay in the game. Those are realistically your only 2 options as of recording this video, so let's move on to something else that a lot of people miss out on. And that is going to be some tiny boosts that you can get from places that not a lot of you remember or have figured out yet. For example, the index over here. A lot of you may not already know that when you collect all the weapons in a singular world, you actually get a 10% mastery boost, and that will apply to every single world. So 10%, 10%, 10%. The list goes on for literally every single world, and whilst you're at it, you could also go ahead and get yourself, luck and as well, damage. Another thing that people don't know about is the secret totem. Now, the secret totem over here is very simple once again. All you have to do is you need to claim the quest that it will provide you, which will be to take out the secret boss of that world once. And then when you take it out, you just walk on back, claim the quest, and boom, you're going to be getting 25% mastery for every boss that you defeat. Keep in mind, this NPC secret totem thingy is going to be found with every secret boss in every world. Oh yeah, for those of you that are wondering where on earth all the secret bosses are, I do showcase them in all of my update videos, and as well I have one video which is dedicated to the first 5 worlds. I'll probably make an updated version in the near future, but for the time being, let's move on to another thing that gives you a ton of mastery, but people don't know how to grind efficiently. Heading on over to the Marine Island, in case you guys already forgotten, we have ascensions. Now, Ascensions, they are kind of like, Anime Eternal's prestige, where, you reach a certain level, you go back to 0, but you get an extra point per level, and then obviously you will eventually reach the maximum of an extra 4.6k%. Now, in order to increase how much XP you get, you need to find places that give you more enemies, like that you can kill at the same time. Here's an example actually, inside of the Cursed World, right? If you have a large range, well, you can go ahead and farm over here where there are 8 enemies, right? So you can just AFK something like this, and you just keep in mind, by the way, you might need like a maximum range for this spot. But yeah, from this spot alone, I am getting 8 per kill, or should I say 8 per second. And I can technically increase it more by placing down a flag, for example, over here, which will give me an extra 4, which will give me a total of 12 kills per second. Now, something that I do want to point out though, do keep in mind that sometimes more kills is not the best thing, right? For example, the easy enemies over here, you can see that they drop 201 XP per mob. But if you, for example, head on over to the bosses, you will see that these over here give you an extra 20 XP. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you are, let's say in, I don't know, let's say you find a world where you can either A, AFK 8 enemies of the easy and medium, or 7 of the, these guys over here, whatever you call them, the bosses. In that case, it would probably be best, right, to calculate how much you would earn, for example, every minute, depending on, I guess which enemies you decide to farm. Because in some cases, 7 mobs of the bosses would outperform 7 or 8 of the easy mobs, or maybe, for example, 8 compared to 5. It really depends on how much XP each of the enemies drop, so always double check. Always make sure you're calculating, and just want to point out, by the way, this specific spot alone, the mega boss does spawn over here. So if you're not strong enough to like one-shot the guy, I wouldn't recommend standing here. However, it is pretty easy to find like different locations in a bunch of different worlds. Just run around, see if you can find like groups of 4 that are like relatively close together. Like for example, these two. These two are not really close together, so I wouldn't recommend AFKing on, for example, here. But you get what I mean, right? It's a bit of trial and error, a bit of mathematics calculation, but eventually you should be good. Enough yapping though, it's time I give you guys a small tip and trick on when you should rank up and when you shouldn't. For example, in my case, right, oftentimes when updates do release, some people might say, SMG, why aren't you, for example, immediately ranking up, because if you rank up, you get 2 times, which will be, very helpful. However, when you do unlock a new world, right, sometimes it's best to use that saved up energy that you've been accumulating over the past day or whatever, and first go ahead and find the mastery gacha of that new world that you've unlocked and try and get bare minimum legendary. Now, why, you may ask? Well, as you can see, the legendary over here, right, it gives me a 400% boost. Now, how long it would take you to get the legendary? Probably to take you around like 10 minutes to 20 minutes, depending on your luck. But obviously, 400% is like a 5 times boost, right? So 5 times is significantly better than 2 times. And then obviously you can stack up each of those boosts. So you'd get this 5 times boost, and then you'll get the rank up of 2 times, which will give you a total of a 10 times boost. So yeah, when you get rank ups, it's not always the smartest thing to immediately rank up. But don't wait too long though. For example, some people decide, like I used to do this, right? I used to say, okay, I'm gonna AFK here, right? Because if I rank up, I won't be able to one-shot, example, these enemies over here, right? And what I ended up doing is I stayed on the same rank until eventually I got this Gojo secret. Now, getting the secret, if I remember correctly, it took me around 4 hours. And obviously 4 hours is a huge waste of time. That's why I've moved on to a bit more of like a efficient approach, right? Get the legendary, get the mythical, I guess, if you get lucky, but ideally, just get the legendary. Then from there, you want to rank up and do not change to a damage setup, right? Always stay on mastery as much as possible. When you change over to damage, you want to stay on damage for as little time as possible. And instead, what you can do is try farming enemies that you can one-shot regardless if you're using your mastery setup. You can do that by heading on over maybe to an earlier world that has a gadget that you haven't maxed out yet, or you could just wait maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes or whatever, maybe pop on a few potions, and you will be able to maybe eventually one-shot the enemies that you want to farm on. I have many videos where I kind of show examples of this exact method. For example, the one where the Westward did release. If needs be, just watch that update video. You can kind of see what I was doing. But yeah, that's just a mini tip that I want to provide to you guys. Don't immediately rank up, because sometimes it's not always the smartest thing and might end up making you take much longer in terms of grinding. Especially if you've saved up like 10 days of mastery, you know? But yeah, let's move on to some of the last few tips and tricks in order to get, you know, full mastery. Alright, here's a pretty good one. I know a lot of people always ask me how on earth I grind this. The token upgrades, everyone's favorite feature in the game. Listen, I can't lie to you all. There's no real like best method for grinding token upgrades. Realistically, the best thing that I used to do was I would head on over to, for example, the Demon Island, and I would farm tokens here. Now, a lot of you might be wondering why on earth I would farm here rather than, for example, in the last world. And well, that's because it turns out that this world has like some of the most tokens on singular enemies. For example, these Jutaros, or whatever you want to call them, they have 1, 2, 3 different types of the shards, right? And the bosses over here, they have, I think, like 3 as well, or 4. Yeah, they also have 3. They have the Demon Art Evolution, Moonshard, Breaststone. You get the idea. So a lot of the time, I usually just end up farming here, which could also be helpful when you're grinding ascension levels, so do keep that in mind. However, again, I do want to point out, as you go further in the worlds, you know, you will get more better like base XP. For example, these ones over here give 113, when we saw that the cursed world was giving like 200. So yeah, that's another thing that you probably want to keep in mind. But here's another thing that you could potentially do if you want to increase how many tokens you have. And that's going to be increasing the amount of drops that you have. Now, drops is a relatively simple aspect to grind. I mean, there's barely anything that actually gives drops. For example, there are achievements that give drops, token upgrades that give drops, potions that give drops, and most importantly, the relic over here. Now, once again, the relic isn't exactly something you can speedrun. You kind of just need to AFK on the Pirate Tower raid a bunch and a bunch until eventually, you know, you're able to save up enough of the shards. However, when you do go ahead and, you know, max this out, and then maybe you head on over to, for example, the achievements, right? I'm pretty sure, yeah, these drop the drop amount achievements. This is a passive thing though, you can't exactly brute force it, so just, you know, leave it on the side. Eventually you'll get like 2 or 3 new like achievements or whatever that you can claim. And then the other method is, again, token upgrades. You know, you just need to, you know, invest tokens that you're trying to grind in order to get more tokens in the long run. Listen, I'm not gonna waste your guys' time, right? In order to grind tokens, either A, just AFK on a game mode that you're going to be grinding regardless. For example, the Shadow Raid, right? A lot of you guys need to grind the Shadow Raid anyways for, you know, the heroes. You know, these bad boys over here, you know, in order to get the stat rerolls and obviously to get the secret ones as well. Well, yeah, you could just farm that, you know, with as many drops, boosts, whatever as you can, and then again, you will just get token upgrades along the side. But the main method that I use is just AFKing here, you know, sitting on these guys, you know, getting around 6 over here, 4 over there, so around 10 kills per second, giving me 4 different types of shards. And I believe at this very moment, this is one of the best spots. Now, I don't want to let you know something just in case if you're trying to find a better spot than what I have right now. Keep in mind, the stronger the enemy, the better chances that they have to drop shards. For example, if I take off my auto attack, right, for a second, you will see that all of these shards, they have like 10%, 12%, you know, which is pretty decent. But in some cases, the bosses actually have even higher drops. For example, 14% over here. This little rule doesn't exactly apply much to every single world, but again, I do highly recommend double check the chances on the drops, because maybe it might be better to farm 8 of the bosses rather than 10 of the, I guess, medium and hard guys. Last thing that I do want to recommend to you all to end off this mastery guide, but I might make a part 2 if there are some questions that maybe I missed out on. But yeah, the last thing that I would recommend is always make sure you're participating in time-locked events. For example, the dungeons, right? You can't brute force these. You have to wait every 20 minutes in order to participate in one of them. And then obviously, when you complete them a certain amount of times, you will get, for example, 10% mastery. Even in the medium, at 25 times, you get 10%. Same thing for the hard and the insane dungeon. And there are many other aspects that are time-locked in the game. For example, the The new feature that was recently released, you know, this like insane upgrade thingy, yeah, the energy upgrade. Well, yeah, this is completely time locked because you can only get the gems inside of the insane dungeons. What I'm trying to say is that if there is some kind of event or game mode or whatever that is time locked and you can't brute force it, whether it be with tokens or money or whatever, just make sure that you're participating, even if you have to stop grinding something else just for like a few minutes or whatever. Because trust me, it will number one be better for your mental health, because obviously if you like see, for example, you need to complete 100 dungeons, you might even give up. At that point you might say, okay, 100 dungeons is too much, I'm quitting anime weapons. I don't want that to happen to you all, so try and break things up bit by bit, right? Don't focus on one singular thing. Try to multitask a little bit, even if it ends up making the one thing that you're focusing on a bit slower. Here's actually an example, since I'm literally doing it right now. At this very moment, I am grinding these like new sorcery power things, right? And yeah, well, every, I guess, 20 minutes when the insane dungeon opens up, I stop grinding that. I quickly hop in here, I put on my damage setup, so that means I'm not getting, my full mastery gain at all times. But in the long run, it will be beneficial because, every single upgrade that I will get here, it will give me an extra 10% mastery. And this is going to be 10% on top of what I have right now. So it's not going to be 10% adding to like 1,000%. If, for example, I have 750 UND, if I get this, it will probably jump up to around 800 or 900 UND. Once again, you just always need to calculate about what is worth grinding if you're being efficient, because sometimes a lot of you might think that, okay, if there's this achievement SMG, right, where if you complete, let's say, Shadowgate 325, right, you'll get 10% mastery. Well, that's not exactly how it applies, right? What actually will end up happening is 10% will be added to the achievement section, which is going to be found over here. So instead of getting, 10% over the 397 QUA that I have right now, it's actually going to be added to 860%, so it becomes 870%, which is a very small boost, trust me. Literally, if I got that achievement that I literally just showcased, the most I'll get probably is, this will hit 400 QUA, which is not even like a 1% boost. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all of the main points that I wanted to cover. Once again, if there are some maybe like important features that I missed out on explaining, feel free to leave your questions down in the comments. I will be happy in order to, answer them. If I had to recommend one more thing that you guys could potentially do in order to max out your energy gain, it would be to participate in the Christmas event, since, there are the special quests that give you an extra 100% mastery and a bunch of different potions. But as well, not only that, a lot of the stuff in the Christmas event is actually the best stuff in the game. For example, this strong red scarf is actually the best mastery accessory in the game. And as well, I'm pretty sure there is one that gives the best damage. Yeah, this one over here, the crazy sweet hat. But just like every single other thing that I've recommended in this video, don't fully invest your time into one thing, because if you try to go one by one, although you will eventually, reach the max, it's not the fastest method. So probably in the end, you would get nowhere near like the leaderboards or anything. You will fall off behind. But apart from that though, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for watching this mastery guide. Hopefully it helps you out. And until next time, probably I'm going to be continuing to upgrade my mastery gain, since at the moment, even though you all might think that 397 is a lot, top 1 has like 500 or 600. And that's with no potions, by the way. That's completely a base multiplier. Yeah, I have a lot of work to do. I'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you for watching, and peace out.